What's going on, guys? It's Fight Season MMA, and today I want to make a video talking about the incredible weekend that we have coming up in front of us. We have UFC 307 headlined by Alex Pereira and Khalil Rountree Jr. on October 5th, this weekend in Salt Lake City, Utah. We got some other great fights on the card. We have the women's bantamweight fight for the championship. We also got Kayla Harrison, Kevin Holland versus Roman Dolidze, Jose Aldo versus Mario Bautista, Wonder Boy versus Joaquin Buckley. There are so many good fights on this card, and I am so excited to see this everything shape out, considering that we have an absolutely amazing card in store for us. And genuinely, I believe that this is going to be a card that is going to overperform, considering that its standards aren't set that high. I know a lot of people are thinking that this main card isn't that great. There's a lot of individuals thinking that there's some other good fights, but truly, I do think that UFC 307 is going to perform, and I want to talk about some of these fights. But if you guys enjoy the UFC content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. That's the best way to help out the channel grow. And while you're down there, please turn on the post notifications, just so you guys are always notified when UFC content releases. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video of predicting UFC 307 fights, how they're going to break down, and what's going on between them. So I want to start with first Joaquin Buckley versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. That is going to be the fight on the prelims. That is going to be kind of right before the main card. And I think that this fight deserves absolutely a lot of respect, considering that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is an older fighter and Joaquin Buckley is coming up in that welterweight division. Buckley beat Nursultan Ruzaboyev in his last one at UFC St. Louis, and he fought like 2 months prior to that, beating Vicente Luque at UFC Atlantic City. Wonderboy last year is coming off a loss to Shavkat Rakhmonov, as we all know is one of the best fighters inside that welterweight division, and truly I believe that that was a very hard stylistic matchup for him. So who do I think is going to win this fight? I think that Joaquin Buckley's style is going to be a very hard thing for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson to really be able to do, unless if his kickboxing is still at that level. The only thing is I think Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is getting a little bit older, and I do think that Joaquin Buckley could go in there and exploit some of the things that are at hand. I do think that Joaquin Buckley is a great fighter. I do think he's got a great career ahead of him, considering that he's in this welterweight division, one of the youngest and best upcoming divisions in the UFC, in my opinion. There's a bunch of different individuals like Ruzaboyev and Rina and a bunch of guys like that, Ian Gary and, Shavkat Rakhmonov. So I do think that he's going to be able to go in there and possibly beat someone like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I would not bet on this fight. I think this fight is really close, but if in my opinion, I would take someone like Joaquin Buckley to win. The first fight opening the main card, we got Mr. Kevin Holland versus Roman Dolidze. Dolidze fought last at UFC 303 on a short notice first placement against Anthony Smith in the featured bout on that card, and that was kind of a boring fight where Roman Dolidze ended up getting the win. But now he is facing Kevin Trailblazer Holland, who recently fought at UFC 302, where he got an incredible armbar victory over Michelle Olashechuk. So who do I think is going to win this fight? I do think I'm going to go with my boy Kevin Holland. I think he's going to be able to defend the takedowns of Roman Dolidze, and I think he's going to ultimately be able to knock him out. I do think that Roman Dolidze, though, is going to be a very hard challenge for him, considering that grappling having style that comes back at him in his direction. I know that Kevin Holland isn't the greatest with grapplers. He lost to Khamzat Chimaev, and Chimaev's like kind of, really good person in that standpoint. He did lose to MVP, who isn't a grappler, but Kevin Holland is an amazing fighter. I truly believe that he is going to be in there and go in and beat someone like Roman Dolidze in this fight, considering that Roman is far levels below him in the striking department. I think this is a very favorable matchup for Mr. Holland. Next off is a women's bantamweight fight where we got the phenom Kayla Harrison in her second fight in the UFC, fighting Caitlin Vieira, and I do think that this is going to be an easy walkthrough fight for Kayla Harrison. Kayla Harrison is a monster. She beat Holly Holm in her last one in UFC 300, an incredible fight to start Kayla Harris's UFC career, and I don't see that trend stopping right now. I think Kayla Harrison is one of the best UFC female fighters in the UFC currently. The only thing that really scares me is how is her chin going to be, considering that she probably cut so much weight to make 135 pounds, considering she is an absolutely massive woman. So I just wonder how Kayla Harrison's weight is, but ultimately I do think that she's going to fly right through Caitlin Vieira this weekend at UFC 307. So for the featured bout on this card, we have Mario Bautista going up against Jose Aldo, the great Jose Aldo, in that bantamweight division. This is going to be a very fun fight. Mario Bautista is a very incredible fighter inside the organization now. He has lost a couple fights in his past, and he's won a couple fights, and he's kind of one of those individuals who's working up one of the prospects inside the UFC, working it up very, very slowly. And truly, this fight with Jose Aldo is going to be a massive test. I think that you really can't, if you are Mario Bautista, you can't get derailed by the aura that is Jose Aldo. There's just the kind of presence he has in the octagon is something so massive that truly it's very, very hard to deal with, considering that he is a very, very intense individual being in there and kind of all of his career. So who do I think is going to win this fight? But I do think Jose Aldo is going to actually be able to go in there and dismantle Mario Bautista, kind of like he did with Jonathan Martinez at UFC 301. I do think Jose Aldo is better than ever. I think a little bit of time outside the sport is very good for him. I think Aldo is going to truly be able to go in there and dismantle someone like Mario Bautista, who is a great up-and-coming fighter, but I do think Jose Aldo is still one of the best UFC bantamweights in the division. In the women's bantamweight division, we have the title going up for between Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena. Pena was one of the few fighters, I think, to beat Amanda Nunes at UFC 269, and they fought at UFC 277. She kind of just got outclassed in the rematch. But Raquel Pennington beating a new champion. She beat Mayra Bueno Silva at UFC 297 and is defending her belt for the first time at UFC 307 in this co-main event at Salt Lake City. And who do I think is going to win this fight? I do think that Juliana Pena is going to take back the crown to ultimately set up a women's super fight between her and Kayla Harrison coming very soon. I do think that Juliana Pena is kind of a better jiu-jitsu artist, and I think that Pennington is still a good fighter, but I do think that Juliana is going to be able to push the pace and ultimately get the finish sometime in round 2 or 3 with some submission. In the main event at UFC 307, we got the man himself, Alex Poatan Pereira, going up against Khalil Rountree Jr. And this would be such an amazing fight at UFC 307. And I'm so excited to see this because Khalil Rountree Jr., in my opinion, is one of the few individuals who can go in there and beat someone like Alex Pereira, considering that he's got a very interesting Muay Thai style, and beating Augusto Sakai at in his previous fight, who was like a world kickboxing champion, is a thing that I do think should be looked at when you look at the fight between Rountree and Pereira. But who do I think is going to ultimately win this fight? And I'm going to stick with Pereira. I think Pereira is going to be a well-rounded machine in this one. And I do think that this is a fight to bet on, considering that I do think that Pereira by KO is going to cash out pretty quick inside this fight. I do think that Alex Pereira is going to be able to have the distance on someone like Khalil Rountree Jr. I think those leg kicks are going to really throw him off. And I do think that just the way he throws them is going to be something that Khalil Rountree Jr. has never seen before. And I think that Alex Pereira is going to be taking advantage of that very quickly to ultimately set up a massive power shot with that nuclear left hook. Alex Pereira is one of the nastiest just kickboxers inside the UFC. He has some of the best strategy and the best thing possible inside the organization to truly allow him to be one of the greatest fighters currently. And I do think that Alex Pereira is going to show why he is currently the number 2 pound for pound fighter inside the organization, whether I agree with it or not. Alex Pereira is up there as one of the best pound for pound fighters in the UFC, and I do think that this fight over Khalil Rountree Jr. is going to be a massive win for Pereira if he can go in there and be himself. And I think that this is Pereira's fight to lose and ultimately not Khalil's to win, considering that I feel like Pereira is going to be able to control the exchanges in every single point, considering that Khalil Rountree Jr. is a striker himself and Pereira's taller, he's longer, he's more experienced, he's fighting someone who's going to be shorter, stockier. Yes, Rountree might be fast, but he has never seen someone as skilled as Alex Pereira, and I think that that is going to be something that truly allows Pereira to excel in his UFC career. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA, and please let me know what you think down below in the comment section about UFC 307 and what you think about these particular fights. I wanted to add the Buckley versus Wonderboy fight because it's a great fight, especially kicking off the UFC prelims prior to the main card starting. I think Holland versus Dolidze is a fun fight. Kayla Harrison jumping in is always entertaining. Jose Aldo versus Mario Bautista is a fun one. The co-main event, Pena versus Pennington is a fun one, and obviously the main event, seeing Alex Poatan Pereira fight someone like Khalil Rountree Jr. is only going to be a fight made for fireworks. But if you guys enjoyed the UFC content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. That's the best way to help out the channel grow. And while you're down there, please turn on the post notifications just so you guys are always notified when UFC content releases daily. Without further ado, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon with more UFC content and news.